Oh, hello, great readers. I'm Belchan.
I'm Nimakung.
I'm Banchan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you a part of Great Expectations.
As.
Great Expectations. Charles Dickens. Job 10. When I reached home, my sister was very curious to know all about Miss Eveshams and asked a number of questions. Neck and the small of the back, and having my face ignominiously shut against the kitchen wall, because I did not answer those questions at sufficient length. I consider probable the key to many reservations. I felt convinced that if I described Miss Eveshams as my eyes had seen it, I should not be understood. Not only that, but I felt convinced that Miss Evesham too would not be understood. And although she was perfectly incomprehensible to me, mice Joe. Consequently, I said as little as I could, and had my face shoved against the kitchen wall. The worst of it was that dappling old Pumblick Hart came gaping over in his chaise cart at tea time to have the details divulged to him, and the mere sight of the torment, with his fish eyes and mouth open, his sandy hair inquisitively on end, and his waistcoat heaving with windy arithmetic, made me vicious in my reticence. Boy han Copenblick again. As soon as he was seated in the chair of honour by the fire, I answered, "Pretty well." Sir, and my sister shook her fist at me. "Pretty well?" Wist Pumblick repeated. "Pretty well is no answer. Tell us what you mean by pretty well." Whitewash on the forehead hardens the brain into a state of obstinacy, perhaps. Anyhow, with whitewash from the wall on my forehead, my obstinacy was adamantine. I reflected for some time, and then answered as if I had discovered a new idea. Shadow of defence. For Joe was busy in the for Joe Mr. Pumblick interposed with no. "Don't lose your temper. Leave this lad to me." What? "Leave this lad to me." Wiste. Pumblick then turned me towards him, as if he were going to cut my hair, and said, "First to get our thoughts in order." I calculated the consequences of replying £400 and finding them against me. Went as near the answer as I could, which was somewhere about 8 pence off. Wiste. 40 pence make 3 and 4 pence, and then triumphantly demanded, as if he had done for me, how much is 43 pence? To which I replied, after a long interval of reflection, Wiste. Pumblick worked his head to screw it out of me, and said, "Is 43 pence 7 and 6 pence difference?" "Yes," said I, and although my sister instantly boxed my ears, it was highly gratifying to me to see that the answer spoiled his joke, and brought into a dead stop. By what like is Miss Evesham? Wiste. Pumblick began again when he had recovered, folding his arms tight on his chest and applying the screw. "Very tall and dark," I told him. "Is she?" "Uncle?" asked my sister. Wister. Humblick winked assent, from which I at once inferred that he had never seen Miss Havisham, for she was nothing of the kind. It said Mr. Humblick concitedly. This is the way to have him. We are beginning to hold our own. I think. I am sure. Uncle returned Mice. Joe. I wish you had him always. Anne. Bye. What was she doing of? When you wedding today? Asked Mr. Humblick. She was sitting, I answered. Mr. Humblick and Mice. Joe stared at one another as they well might, and both repeated. Yes, said I. And Mrs. still at that's her niece. I think handed her in cake and wine at the coach window, on a gold plate. And we all had cake and wine on gold plates. And I got up behind the coach to eat mine. Was anybody else there? Asked Mr. Humblick. 4 ducks, said I. Immense, said I. Mr. Humblick and Mice. Joe stared at one another again, in utter amazement. I was perfectly frantic or recklessness under the touch, and would have told them anything. Where was this coach? In the name of gracious? Asked my sister. In Miss Havisham's room. They stared again. But there weren't any horses to it. I added the same cause of harnessing. Can this be possible? Uncle? Asked Mice. Joe. I'll tell you. Mum, said Mr. Humblick. My opinion is, it's a sedenture. She's flighty. Did you ever see her in it? Uncle? Asked Mice. Joe. How could I? He returned, forced to admission. When I never see her in my life? I just. Uncle. Why? Don't you know, said Mr. Humblick testily, that when I have been there, I have been took up to the outside of her door, and the door has stood ajar, and she has spoke to me that way. Don't say you don't know that. However, the boy went there to play. What did you play at? We played with flags, I said. I beg to observe that I think of myself with amazement. Flags, echoed my sister. Yes, said I. Still waved a blue flag, and I waved a red one. And Miss Havisham waved one sprinkled all over with little gold stars. Out at the coach window. Story, repeated my sister. Out of her cupboard, said I. And I saw pistols in it and junk and pistols. And there was no daylight in the room. That's true. Mom, said Mr. Humblick, with a grave nod. That's the state of the case. For that much I've seen myself. And then they both stared at me. And I, with an obtrusive show of wartlessness on my countenance, stared at them, and plaited the right leg of my trousers with my right hand. If they had asked me any more questions, I should undoubtedly have betrayed myself. In the yard, and a berry in the brewery, they were so much occupied. However, in discussing the marvels I had already presented for their consideration, That I escaped. Cup of tea. To my sister. More for the relief of her mind than for the gratification of his. Related my pretended experiences. And in helpless amazement, I was overtaken by penitence, but only as regarded him and not in the least as regarded the other two. Towards Joe and Jolie, I considered myself a young monster. Eva. They had no doubt that Miss Havisham would do something for me. Their doubts related to the firm that something would take. My sister stood out for property, wished to trade, I say. The coring and seed trade. For instance, Joe fell into the deepest disgrace with both. You had fought for the veal cullets. If a fool's head can express better opinions than that, said my sister, and you have got any work to do, you had better go and do it. So he went. After Mr. Pumblick had driven off, and when my sister was washing up, I stole into the fridge to Joe, and remained by him until he had done for the night. Then I said, before the fire goes out, Joe, should you? Phil, said Joe, drawing his showing stool near the fridge. Then tell us, what is it? Joe, said I, taking hold of his rolled up shirt sleeve and twisting it between my finger and thumb. Remember, said Joe, I believe you. It's a terrible thing. Oh, what are you telling of? This, cried Joe, pulling back in the greatest amazement. Yes, I do. It's lies. But not all of it? Why, sure you don't mean to say that there was no black Warwick Co. For I stood shaking my head. But at least there was dogs. There. Come. It said Joe, persuasively. If there was no wool cutlets. A dog, said Joe. A puppy? Joe. As I fixed my eyes hopelessly on Joe. Joe contemplated me in dismay. Old chap, this won't do. Old fella, I say, it's terrible. Joe. Terrible, cried Joe. Awful. I don't know what possessed me. Joe, I replied, letting his shirt sleeve go, and sitting down in ashes at his feet, hanging my head. But I wish you hadn't got me to call names at cards, Jacks. And then I told you that I felt very miserable. Or that I hadn't been able to explain myself to my Joe and Pumblick, who were so rude to me. Proud. And that he had said I was coming. And that I know I was coming. And that I wished I was not coming. And that the lies had come of it somehow, though I didn't know how. This was a case of metaphysics, at least as difficult for Joe to deal with as for me. But Joe took the case altogether out of the region of metaphysics, and by that means vanquished it. There's one thing you may be sure of, said Joe, after some rumination, namely, lies is lies. Howsoever they come, they didn't ought to come, and they come from the father of lies, and work round to the same. Did you to know more of him? Pill? That ain't the way to get out of being common, old chap. And as to being coming, I don't make it out at all clear. You are uncommon in some things. You're uncommon small. I am ignorant and backward. Why? See what a letter you wrote last night. Wrote in print even. I've seen letter Shaw. And from gentle folks, that I'll swear went wrote in print, said Joe. I have learnt next to nothing. Joe, you think much of me. Well, it said Joe. Be it so or be it sons. You must be a common scholar, for you can be uncommon one. I should hope. The king upon his throne, with his crown upon his head, can't sit and write his acts of parliament in print, without having begun, when he were unpromoted prince, with the alphabet. Added Joe, with a shake of the head that was full of meaning, and begun at it too, and worked his way to Z. And I know what that is to do. There was some hope in this piece of wisdom, and it rather encouraged me. With a common ones as to things and earnings, pursued Joe, reflectively, mightn't be the better of continuing for to keep company with common ones. Wofla. I'm sorry they weren't a flag. Whether that might be or mightn't be, is a thing as can't be looked into now, without putting your sister on the rampage. And that's the thing not to be thought of as being done intentional. Looky here. At what is said to you by a true friend. Which this do you the true friend say? If you can't get to be uncommon through going straight, you will never get to do it through going crooked. So don't do no more on him. You are not angry with me. Old chap. Such living to them which bordered on whale cutlets and dog fighting assistants who all wish your would advise. They're being dropped into your meditations. When you go upstairs to bed. That's all. Old chap. When I got up to my little room and said my prayers, I did not forget his recommendation. And yet my young mind was in that disturbed and unthankful state, that I thought long after I laid me down, how coming a still would consider Joe, a mere blacksmith, how thick his boots, and how coarse his hands. I thought how Joe and my sister were then sitting in the kitchen, and how I had come out dead from the kitchen, and how Miss of a shaman still never sat in a kitchen, but were far above the level of such common doings. I fell asleep recalling what I used to do when I was at Miss Havisham's, as though I had been there weeks or months, instead of hours, and as though it were quite an old subject of remembrance, instead of one that had arisen only that day. That was a memorable day to me, for it made great changes in me. But it is the same with any life. Imagine one selected day struck out of it, and think how different its course would have been. Suppose you've read this. and think for a moment of the long chain of iron or gold, of thorns or flowers, that would never have bound you, but for the formation of the first link on one memorable day. To be continued.